What are these directors thinking about when they head into this meeting today, and what should they be thinking about?
One thing they're thinking about, there are too darn many of them. There are 14 of them, 13 plus Les Moonves. That's a pretty large group. Outside of banking, you don't usually see that large a collection these days. Plus, if the average age of a Fortune 500 CEO is 45, the average age of this board is a little over 75. They got several octogenarians, one nonagenarian, of course, and they realize that in the demography, they've got a lot that they need to be considering, such as how do young women feel working in a place like this right now? It's not reflected on that board. The youngest person on that board, though, is a woman, and that's Martha Minow, who just stepped down as dean at Harvard Law School, that is.
Right.
But what's an interesting twist, you'd be the only one to think of this, but hopefully I beat you to it. Her dad was on the CBS board, is one of the longest members on this board, Newton Minow, who is the old FCC chairman that called TV the Great Wasteland. So Bill Paley, the founder, brought him on the board to try to clean up CBS. But this place has had the worst CEO succession history since Bill Paley founded it in 1928.
Well, they haven't had to worry about succession for a long time because they've had a CEO who's been extraordinarily good at his job. But it would appear, at least, that may come to an end. And so what do you think about as you're the board as well in terms of trying to maintain order? And I mean, you're talking about a company that's lost 10% of its market value over the last 2 trading days.
You know, when anybody in this industry, including you, think of Les Moonves, you think of this incredible string of hits of NCIS and Survivor. He's the one who found the guy who created The Apprentice, of course, and all these other great shows, CSI and things. But this is a show picker, as a producer. There ought to be lots of other people in there. This should not be the CEO's job to be picking these great shows. They better have it. He has Joe Iannello, as we know, in there, dressed up, ready to go. He's a finance guy, but we've seen other finance guys do well in media. I think you had the best solution. I heard earlier today you suggested this third course rather than some of these stare-down options between Viacom and CBS and the rest. And that is that he take a preemptive exit, the way Martin Sorrell did in the midst of an investigation. He spares himself the indignity. I'm just stealing your lines. He had a very successful 15-year reign. Why drag us all through it? These allegations, as Koplovitz was just saying.
And the potential for further allegations as well. We can never forget that. In many of these instances, Jeff, there have been others that come after the initial story.
At this very network, as we know, that very network, not this network, is at CBS, of course, after the issues came out in CBS News. Of course,
Charlie Rose,
with Charlie Rose, they had 8 allegations. They had 27 follow this spring. So you don't know if others will come out. The one thing I would differ with is some suggested on air here today that this could take a few months of investigation. It shouldn't. If it is, then I think Proskauer Rose is milking them. Because they have spent so much time in CBS and the rest of the media before. This is not like Robert Mueller. This should be a 1-week investigation. There's absolutely no reason. I know a lot of firms who do this. Proskauer Rose has a lot of this business. It's almost down to a factory, a machine now. They know who the victims are. If others come forward, great. But to get the corroboration is not that hard. So it shouldn't take that long. But I think maybe, as Kay suggested, he ought to step down temporarily at least so you don't have that awkwardness.
Well, there's also a lot of money at stake, as we said earlier, potentially for him.
I want to get your thoughts on the statement from Moonves via CBS because it kind of surprised me. It was more honest potentially than I think I would have expected. I recognize that there were times decades ago when I may have made some women uncomfortable by making advances. Those were mistakes and I regret them immensely, but I always understood and respected and abided by the principle that no means no. And I have never misused my position to harm or hinder anyone's career. He acknowledges that he's made advances. Do you think that was the right move?
I think he may have had no other choice if this evidence is so clear. I do admire him for saying it. However, we don't want to make a hero out of him for saying it. If the evidence is so clear, Charlie Rose made almost identical the statements, and some others that closer to us that we know that made similar statements when the facts were so clear out there. So he had to say that, and I think that if you take him just at what he said, and this is saying, well, he's still entitled to due process, if even what he says is true, it raises a question. His own employees or people he's doing business with that he's making advances towards, that was unprofessional behavior 60 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, or just 10 in this case.